G'day and welcome to another edition of the Footy Form Guide podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Wally, joined as always by my good mate, Harro. How are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, Wally, not too bad. But more importantly, how's the body feeling, mate? For those who don't know, Wally did the stupidest thing ever and laced up the boots on the weekend. So I'm keen to hear about that.
Well, I laced up the boots and I stood around on the ground. I made sure it was pretty bruise-free, Harro, to be honest. I didn't put my body on the line in any capacity whatsoever. I think that apart from a few people taking it a little too seriously, most of us out there were just happy enough to get through the game unscathed and go and have plenty of beers afterwards, mate. But no, over in Adelaide, got to play on Norwood Oval, which was a bit of fun. And yeah, mate, it was all for local footy, which is good. So it was an enjoyable little trip, mate.
Nice. So you're telling me you didn't get leather poisoning, though? You're okay.
Have never come close to getting that in my life, mate. And it was an interesting one. I didn't get worst on, so that'll do. And I beat our man Flanners in the head-to-head for fantasy points. So that's enough for me, which just avoids me having to do some sort of punishment this week. So that was it, mate. But how was your weekend, Harro?
Mate, my weekend was all right, mostly just keeping warm by the fire, actually, and watching as much footy as we could. So, and again, mate, a pretty strong weekend for the followers and for myself. So, yeah, all good.
Very good, mate. Well, let's get stuck in our highlights and lowlights for the round. Talk us through the highlights on the punt across the weekend.
Yeah, so we were very keen on the unders in the Brisbane v Adelaide game, and that went well under, making up just around a 130. So very good. We also said, on that game as well, we picked out a couple of guys who go well in the wet, and that was McCluggage and Ashcroft, and they both beat their lines. So that was pleasing. The best bet, we had the Swannies under their individual line of 88.5, and that won. We had the Cats at the line, and also we tipped up Holmes' disposals, and he got 40. The Cats beat the line. Now, this was a good one, Wally. We mentioned Port Adelaide try bet to beat GWS by over 15.5, and they won by 16. So that paid $6.50. Look, there was plenty of others, but they were our main highlights for the round, mate.
Nice, mate. And some lowlights. What did we miss?
Yeah, so we had a few. Look, we were pretty good around the team stuff this week. We missed on a few players actually, and Libba cost us I think it was our Friday night same game multi. Thursday night, sorry. He cost us that one. He just had an off night. I don't know what happened there, and sometimes this can happen. We missed our train this week, which was a little bit disappointing. Obviously you don't expect to hit these big 20-1 shots every week. But I reckon I probably could have done better with the trains this week. So we'll mark that down as a little bit of a miss. And we also, for those who don't follow it, we're in a little competition with all the other punters out there on X. The Cappers, it's the AFL Cappers League. Anyone can look that up on Twitter. And we had Butters under 27.5 disposals, expecting Bedford to get the role there. And I'm not too sure where he went. He just went missing. And Butters covered the 27.5, ended up with 32. So that's kind of where we missed for the weekend, mate. But overall, very positive stuff.
All right, mate, very good. Another good week. Let's get to some questions off social because we've got a lot. We have a few of these work into each other. And I'll answer what I can off the top and then throw to you as needed. First one from Sammy, are the days of $101 odds on the unders over? So are we done with those? Looks like Sportsbet is capping at $34. I'll put in a request to find out about this. Hopefully I'll hear back, and I've asked a couple of people within the industry and just going to see if this is something we can ever expect to return. But at the moment it is watch this space. We're unsure. All right. What teams right now do you think produce the best games for a punt? Pretty broad question, Harro, but is there anything that we're looking at? Is there any teams? I guess it's the non-stingy teams we want to be looking at, but is there any in particular that we've found have been better than others?
Well, look, Essendon, they tend to get a lot of disposals and concede a lot of disposals as well. I think they're involved in the highest disposal games pretty much overall. So their games are quite good. Collingwood games, I seem to do quite well in Collingwood games as well. Look, a lot of it's down, like tagging's playing such a big role now. The teams that don't tag, you can probably have a little bit more confidence. The Gold Coast Suns would probably be a good example of that. But I probably don't have one team that stands out. I'm looking for matchups week to week, depending on how both teams go about it, and that's sort of where my thinking is around that.
Few called out there. That's good though. So Suns, Dons, Pies, usually involved in these sort of areas, which is great. All right, this is from Gary's model. You handicap a lot on form, it seems. Do you ever consider teams that might be a buy low or sell high spot if their current rating drifts too far from their base rating? So, for example, could the Giants be a buy low now after 2 consecutive disappointing performances? And they obviously travel to Port this week.
No.
They just played Port. Melbourne travel to Port. Excuse me there. Yeah. No. They play Brisbane. They travel up north.
Yep, correct, Wally. So I understand the question, and I'm always looking for overreactions from week to week by the market. And I think, because things will often revert back to a normal level. And sometimes, like you see, I think a really good example is when Brisbane had a poor one against Collingwood off a 5-day break. And I think the market overreacted a little bit to that. And so you're looking to come back the other way the following week when the market does have a bit of an overreaction. Or you can go the other way and you think what's happening right now with this team doesn't look like an easy fix, or there's not a great reason for why they had a bad performance, and perhaps the market's not rating them, badly enough. So it can really go both ways. I'm always looking for reasons why a team may be overrated, and a reason for that they'll probably come back. And maybe Hawthorn was a good one last week, Wally. They were a pretty big price, based off a couple of bad performances. But you probably always knew of Hawthorn that there was a good one around the corner. So, I think that answers that question.
Yep. And next question to that is, are the Giants now don't go near as far as a betting proposition?
I think they're really battling. If you line up all of their form, since they beat Geelong, which now looks an amazing victory, given what they've done since. But I think there's reasons why. And when you have these reasons, it's actually just makes logical sense. If you look at their midfield right now, all the guys missing out of there, you take a good chunk of any team's midfield out, and it does make it hard to compete. And maybe they don't quite have the depth that some of these other teams have.
Yep, very, very good. From Muzz, what variable goes into Harro's rating system for match results and total points, and what manual adjustments are made?
Look, manual adjustments, you will be looking to adjust for things like injury in the run of the game. Sometimes I'll make a little adjustment if I think the umpiring's been heavily biased to one side. I'll make adjustments based on the strength of the team that's being fielded that day. So, for instance, if Carlton played Essendon with a full strength side, I'd rate that performance differently to playing Essendon with their whole key sort of stocks out. So obviously accuracy as well is another big one that you make adjustments for. Some of these things are subjective as well. So, maybe you're guessing a little bit when you're making these adjustments, but these are the sorts of things I think rather than having a pure data-based rating system that doesn't take into account any of these subjective things, having something like this, which like 5-day breaks as well. That's another one. Like I'm discounting that Brisbane performance earlier in the year against Collingwood because of that. You really saw that the 5-day break had a big impact there. So these are all the sorts of things that it is a bit subjective. It comes back to, some things that, you might rate differently to other people. But that's what makes my ratings a little bit different to others as well. And if they were all the same, it would be a little bit boring and we'd all be coming up with the same tips and everything every week. So there's a little insight into what goes in behind the scenes, mate.
Yeah, very good. Next one is, how long does unders season last for? And I also, another question related to this was, will there be a correction? How long until it corrects itself? And I can't remember the exact question there, but that's paraphrasing it. But I've had a look now, and the correction's already in, because there isn't a single game in the 7 games this weekend that is over 170. So we usually at least see 1 or 2 that are over that mark, but I feel like they're all in the 150s or low to mid 160s.
Yeah. Yeah, look, how long does unders season? I think that the weekend was like a perfect storm for the unders betters. And like we got a lot of bad weather thrown in with some inaccurate kicking in some games. And like obviously we saw 8 from 8 go under, which is that's pretty rare. And I know that there were some punters out there who had some big multis with all the unders, and well done to those people. A few people sent some bet slips and whatnot into us, and I love to see it. The other thing, with this, Wally, I think now we're on a run of 14 of the last 15 games going under. So I called under season 2 weeks ago. We've seen 14 out of 15 go under. So pretty amazing, that. And we will see it flip back the other way. And, you can see it already. The average totals for all of the games this week is a lot lower than what we saw 2 weeks ago. So there's been a big adjustment there from the bookies already. And look, I think we've just got to keep sharp on this sort of stuff. It's not going to keep going under all the time. But look, it's obviously something that hopefully people have cashed in on the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we look at this per game, obviously, and then we have more up-to-date information in terms of weather and trends that are happening closer to the game. And say it every week, Harro. Check us out on X, on Twitter, footyfgpod, and that's where that information will be closer to the game. Funny one from Paul actually asked, he goes, ask Harro why 2 coffees and an egg and bacon roll cost $36 down his way over the weekend. I thought it was an unders weekend. Far from, Paul. You go down Mornington Peninsula, mate, it's never unders. Don't worry about that. They know how to charge down that way.
Yeah.
All right.
There's definitely a Portsy tax down here. It's not fair, is it?
Certainly is. All right, next one. Our man Dyler Turden. How do you know if a team is going to run a tag? Langdon on Dacos was virtually unpredictable. Do you listen to the pre-game interviews or the chat in the lead up to the game? How do you stay on top of it all? Look, we've spoken about this a few times. A good thing to watch is the presses. So during the week, you go to the club websites and you watch those presses with the coach before, and you can get information out of that. It isn't guaranteed, though. Harro, is there anything else specifically for a tag that punters can look at? Or, I mean, I know that occasionally get a bit of info around what was going on at training and that, but apart from the presser, it's pretty hard to predict this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I guess you've got to put your coach's hat on. And I think, I saw Dacos getting tagged, but I didn't see Ed Langdon being the one to do the job. But I thought that was, pretty clever by the Melbourne staff there. So, look, we saw a lot of it on the weekend, didn't we? And sometimes it is pretty hard to predict. You've just got to, keep an eye on sides that are doing it. I think we picked out some good ones on the weekend. I know last week I mentioned Setterfield to Cripps being one. We had who else did we have? We had a few in there. Dawson got tagged for Adelaide. We know the Saints are doing it from week to week. We saw that, the other week. So there's a lot of it going on right now. So, yeah, you've just got to keep an eye on who's doing what jobs and then think about the matchups coming up. And one we did get caught out on the weekend was LDU getting tagged by Hoff at West Coast. Didn't see that one coming. So, look, it is a little bit tricky, but you've just got to keep an open mind with these sorts of things and put your coach's hat on before the game. And sometimes, you're better off just backing guys who butcher the footy because they're the last ones to get tagged, So it's the guys who have got the really good disposal that seem to get it all the time. So that's kind of how I think about it. And that the teams have to have the right type of player as well. So, yeah, it's playing a big role.
Well, and Michael asks us, how confident do you have to be to punt on someone getting 25 touches. LDU, Wines, Libert, Dacos, Anderson all had matchups that maybe we on paper work, but they all fell short. I think it's a bit of an anomaly that all of them missed. LDU for me, Harro's one. I just don't know. How do you catch him? How do we, I feel like he's all over the place at the moment.
Well, actually, LDU had been over 25, I think, his last 6 games before the weekend. So he was doing it he was doing it pretty consistently. I think that West Coast just had the right type of player to man up on him in Hoff. So, and that's the way they decided to go. Noah Anderson 100% got tagged on the weekend by Mullen in the Geelong. I think it was Mullen or O'Connor, one of them. Definitely did the job there. I think maybe that was a predictable one. We did avoid him. So he was O'Connor went to him. The one I didn't see coming was Miller actually got tagged by Mullen. So Geelong ran kind of 2 taggers on the weekend, which was interesting. You don't see that all the time either. So, but I think, you just try and you try and work these things out. You're going to miss occasionally on them, but there's plenty of guys out there getting 25 consistently, week after week. I think Wines was mentioned there. We got called out with Wines. Look, he ended up with 60% game time. So, and this is what you think about the following week. You're like, am I going to follow up and back Wines again? You go, well, he's probably not going to have 60% game time again. Maybe he got stuck on the bench a few times, when there was, especially in such a low-scoring weekend. Often the only time they get to swap over on the bench is when there's goals. And so guys can get stuck for 12, 15 minutes when there's no goal for a long time. And so these things, you can take into account as well. It's probably a little bit of an anomaly, and I think the players who are doing it consistently that you don't think are going to get tagged will probably continue to do it consistently.
Okay. What's a more profitable betting system, taking singles or taking a few safe disposal legs for around $1.80, $2? Well, I don't know if there is a set way that this is more profitable or that's more profitable. Obviously, it depends on your hit rate and that. I think that whatever your value can be, and we spoke about this, Harro, I'll just give this and then you can finish it off. We spoke about multis. We've spoken many times about multiplying out the value. So if you think you're getting a better price on something and you're getting it across multiple legs, for example, if you are looking at this and you go, Richmond give up possession to midfielders, you might find 3 mids go a little lower than what you think that they will get, multi those up and you're getting that $1.80, $2 rather than just going at one to beat their line at the same price. But it really depends on the scenario, right?
Look, I think just as long as you're taking value and as long as every leg in a multi is actually good value, over time, both ways of doing things should work out well. Now, you will find a lot less variance with just taking singles. So you're much less likely to wipe your bank out taking singles all the time. Just that, obviously multis, they're going to be longer odds. There's going to be more variance. There's more that can go wrong. So, if you wanted to make sure your bank really lasts and grows maybe at more of a steady rate, focusing on those singles is probably going to be your go, I'd say.
Very good. Dusty asks, would you guys ever set up a Discord or something similar so listeners can chat live about the footy, punts and share bets, etc.? Yes, definitely something we're considering. Stay tuned on that front. We've already asked about the books. Since we've now crossed over the halfway mark of the season, what are your grand final matchups and premiership tips? I can go first, Harro, and then you can go. I'd have to have rocks in my head to suggest that to tip against Collingwood. I've also said I know that they're flying at the moment, but the last couple of years they've been able to sustain. Not last year, but the 2 years prior to that, they've been able to sustain that really good level across the year. And I think that the way they play and their structure and their system means they don't have the drop-off that other teams have if they go out early, really hard early. The other one for me, Brisbane's top 2 and they've played one good game of footy all year. I keep saying it. They're top 2 and they have not played any good footy. So that suggests to me a team that won it last year and is continually putting themselves in a position to be top 4 and to play in prelims. They're the other ones. So for me, those two, but at the moment it's Collingwood. There's no spoil there. It's quite obvious. What about yourself, Harro?
Well, I actually just think Collingwood's price is poison right now, $3.75. Yeah. So I wouldn't consider them. And I come back to what you're saying, Wally, and it's Brisbane. And look, if they can finish top two, Gabba, Granny. I think that they're just setting it up and timing their run well. I think they got the best midfield. They're actually healthier as well than what they were last year. The only query on them is that lack of key forward without Danaher being there. But I think at the price, $7.50, the way things are shaping up for them, I think is probably the go. And the one that's probably they're sitting outside of the 8 at the moment is the Dogs. I could see them getting on a run as well. So there's a couple for you.
Yeah, I think the Dogs' best footy has looked as good as anyone's.
Yeah.
We just it's a bit inconsistent at the moment.
Yeah.
All right. This is a great question, and I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure exactly what the rules are. If a player takes a mark before the siren, then kicks the ball back to the umpire after the siren, is it recorded as a disposal? I don't believe it is. I think it's only if they're having a genuine shot on goal. But what if they just kick the ball down the field from the half-back line? So they've marked, they don't play on, they just run over the mark and kick it long. I mean, not many players do it. But do you know the exact rule there, Harro?
No, I mean, I don't know the exact rule, but I'm pretty certain that you're correct in terms of it's only if they're having a shot for goal because, yeah. Just
another way to lose. Just another. There's nothing worse than you need one disposal and the ball finishes in the hands of your player that you're chasing. That's one of the worst. There was another question there. Any update on future markets now that the season halfway through? We've just spoken about the premiership ones. Then, Harro, I will ask you this: do you have an opinion on the Brownlow at the moment, or is it just sort of like
No, I think we mentioned this the other week, didn't we? And,
we spoke about Noah Anderson.
Yeah, Noah Anderson was the one that we liked at the price. And he's now into fourth favourite. So he's come right in since then. And I think the other one was Maxi Gawn that we liked at the big price as well. So my thoughts haven't really changed too much since then. And so, we'll keep an eye on this and we'll probably do a lot more work on the Brownlow, maybe post the bye rounds, maybe we'll start to. But for me, this year, obviously we saw a really high polling year last year. This is going to be a much lower polling year, I think, and a lot closer too. So it's probably going to be a much better night, a much better, closer sort of polling night than what we've seen maybe last year, the year before.
This might be a year where we do see someone at odds win it, and they're great years where you go and you don't know. There could be value across the board. All right, that's it for questions off social. We've covered a heap there. Let's get into the footy. Harro, Thursday night at Marvel. The Saints take on the Doggies. Now, I had a look into this. The Saints are $3.43. The Dogs are $1.32. The line's 20.5 points. But interestingly, these two teams, the last 5 times that they have played, it's all blowouts. Dogs by 71, Dogs by 60, Saints by 51, Dogs by 28, Dogs by 111. All comfortably over that line. And it's just an interesting one because I look at this and go, is this the bounce back game from the Dogs where they come out and they just whack the poorly St Kilda and then they get themselves back on track and maybe they pop back into the 8? What do you think?
No, I kind of agree, Wally. I had a good look into this one as well. It was pretty evident that the Dogs really like this matchup, don't they? And I think the big fella Darcy, one of my favourites, is coming back too. So pretty good timing, from their point of view for sure. So I quite like, sorry, phone's ringing. I quite like the Doggies here, mate. And I think there is a bit of a bounce back factor. Also, I had a good look in. We spoke last week about the buys, trying to find some trends around the buys and stuff like that. And what I found was teams playing their games second up off a buy is when their strongest sort of performance comes. So they've had that week back to get themselves, back into the flow of things. The second game back's normally the strongest game, and they come up against the Saints who are off their bye. And we saw on the weekend with the Dogs coming off their bye against the Hawks, maybe they were a little bit off. Okay, so I really like that factor as well for the Doggies this week, being second back up off their bye, coming up against Saints, fresh off their bye, in a matchup that they really, really like. And just from a ratings point of view, I've got the Dogs well further ahead than the 20-point line that we're being offered. So, quite keen to have a bet on the Dogs at the minus 20. We have a look at some player stuff, mate, and Bailey Dale, his line's 27.5. His last six has gone 32, 20, 31, 31, 49, 22, and 30. So he's clearing that comfortably, unless he's been the 20 and the 22. He had a lot of attention given to him. So where the Saints, they don't tend to put attention into these halfback types. They tend to put the attention more into the midfielders. His last five against the Saints, he's gone 34, 30, 21, 39, 32. He also loves playing at Marvel. His last five at Marvel are 29, 20, 32, 49, 30. So I feel like there's a lot lining up for Bailey Dale here, and he's a guy I'd like to follow, along with the Dogs having a pretty comfortable win in this one, mate, second up off their bye.
Could be a ladder, this one, Harro. We could ladder the Doggies up. Your starting point's only 20.5 points. You're going to start getting a good price at the 40 and the 60. Love Bailey Dale. Maybe we'll look at a ladder there too. That's great. Love it. All right, Friday night, mate. We're going to head to Tassie, because why wouldn't you want to head to Tassie in winter on a Friday night under training lights? Is kind of what it looks like down there. As much as I love it down there, I do love it down in Tassie. Hawks are $1.89, Adelaide's $1.95. It's a pick-em game. The line's a half, by the way. Like, this could start either way. It'll depend on teams and matchups. Interestingly, the Hawks are 8-1 at Tassie over the last 3 seasons, including this one. So even when they were garbage 2 years ago, they only dropped a game down there. So I think they went 3-1, then they went 4-0, and then they're 1-0 there so far this year. So it's a happy hunting ground once again for Hawthorn, even when they haven't been at their best. This is an interesting matchup for me. I like the Hawks in this one, but I'm trying to separate my own bias from that. So I'm going to throw to you completely on this, and we'll take what you say as gospel. But I'll tell you what, this would have been better at the MCG, Harro. This could be a cracking matchup. Yeah. Would have been nice to be at it.
Yeah. Well, mate, if you like the Hawks, I'm going to have to back the Crows here. Your record.
Fair enough.
Wally, the record on the Hawthorn games isn't really great, so no, I take that back. But where did I go? I struggled with this one in terms of finding, picking a winner. I couldn't be more impressed with the Crows, but then really don't want to oppose Hawthorn down at Launceston. So I found that difficult. My mind then went to under total points, which we're seeing both of these teams produce fairly low-scoring games. I spoke a lot about the Crows last week, how their games are going a lot lower now, but then we get a total of 155 in what should be good conditions. So I was a little bit put off there. Now, other area look is this is actually the Crows conceding the least disposals in the comp. Hawthorn conceding the second least disposals in the comp. Oh. So, I mean, that's where I think it's just a good game for the Undertaker maybe to make an appearance, Wally. And
yes.
I've named you love the Undertaker.
Love him.
Yeah. So I've gone to work here, Wally, and picked a few plays that you might want to look to the unders side with the disposal betting. And I've got Rankin here, mate. He's spending a little bit more time forward the last 3 weeks, or the last 2 weeks, I should say. And his line's 20.5. His last two, he's gone 18 and 18. And he gets a tough matchup here in the Hawks. Ben Keys, his line's at 17.5. He's only been over that twice in his last 7 games. His last 3 games against Hawthorn, 12, 11, and 10. So I see that as a decent matchup. Jake Saligo, mate. He had a cracking start to the season, but he's gone right off since then. And his line's 20.5, and he's been under that in 7 of his last 8 matches. And the last one here, mate, Josh Battle, his line is 17.5, and he's only been over that once in his last 5 games. And he'll definitely have to man up this week with the Crows having those 3-gun tall forwards. He'll have to do a job there instead of kind of floating around picking up easy kicks, mate. So I think it's a game to be playing the unders, on the disposals. It's a little, it's a tricky one with both of these sides being quite stingy. So that's where I'd go. And the other one, Wally, it's more of a futures bet, but we talked the other week about looking to come back on the other side of Hawthorn after maybe being, opposing them through this tough run. The Hawks are now $7.50 to make the top 4. Now, I think that's a big price given the run in their fixture that they've got coming up. And I still see the Hawks playing their best footy in the back half of the year. So as they did last year as well, they went on a real run in the back half of the year. I had a look at their fixture, and this could be as simple as coming down to whether they can beat either Collingwood or Brisbane in their last 3 games. Because I think aside from those 2, they get a pretty good run. Mate, I wouldn't mind the Hawks, if they get a Collingwood with 2-3 rounds to go. I think that they'll, if that's, you're talking about a $7.50 shot, it could just come down to that. So that's another area, Wally, that I found when having a look into this game.
Yeah, very good, Harro. We spoke about that. We've spoken about a couple of these. I spoke to you. I was saying about Fremantle when they were $34, maybe win the flags. They got this run coming. They're short, and you might then be able to cash out on that. And the same with this backing. We said the Hawks to miss. I think the price we landed on was about $5.50. So it was after the Gold Coast loss, but before Brisbane and Collingwood. And all of a sudden, that looks like a pretty bloody big price now after the win on the weekend. So maybe now it's time to back them the other way. All right. One other thing there, Harro.
Can I interrupt you? Sorry.
Yeah.
One guy I want to call out is Josh Weddle. He's rising in the ranks of being one of my favourite players in the comp right now. And I know we backed him for a goal at $2.60 2 weeks ago. He kicked another one on the weekend. And, mate, I'm just loving his work. I'm not saying he's a good bet or anything. I'm just putting it out there that I am loving this guy. And he's got the 23 on the back as well. He's got Dermy's number. And he's running with the big mop of hair. And it's just a lot to love about him.
How good's that? Just a bit of a appreciation post for Joshy Weddle. No arguments from me, mate. It's nice to see. It's always good when you get a good 23. It's important to our club. Derm, then we had a little break. Then Bud, and then we had a little break. It's very, very important. There's a couple of big numbers for us, 23, 19. Anyway, mate, always good as well to watch my Hawks and cheer for under disposals across the board. So that should be a bit of fun for me as well. Mate, Saturday, we head to the Gabba for the early game. Brisbane hosting the Giants. We spoke about it briefly earlier. Brisbane's $1.35. The Giants are $3.23. We were saying earlier it's probably not an overreaction. They do have some issues there. The line's 18.5, mate. Brizzy?
Yeah. Yep. I think this is an example, Wally, for me. You've got Brisbane coming off a loss. I love that. Okay. It's also a loss that was full of merit. I think they won expected scoring. It's Adelaide away in tough conditions. 5 more scoring should have won the game. Okay. I think that's most, and even Fague said in his presser after it, they were probably the best side on the night, just didn't come away with the points. That was a cracking game of footy. So they're coming off that. The Lions are coming off losing to Port. The Giants are coming off losing to Port. And we know, Port, although their best is pretty good, most of their form this season is really poor. You go further into what the Giants have been doing, they should have lost to Richmond the week before, lost on expected scoring, minus 6 or 7 scoring shots. Their form in the last month since they beat the Cats, GWS, is really bottom 6, and they've actually slid to 13th in my ratings now. as well. Coming up against Brisbane, who I think that they're best and they're likely to bring somewhere around their best this week. As we saw against Hawthorn, a fortnight ago, they do get up for teams, who are rated a bit higher. And I really expect the Lions to come out in perfect conditions on their home deck. I think that they'll give the GWS Giants a little touch-up in this one, mate. I don't think the 3-goal line is anywhere near enough. So very, very keen on the Lions here, mate. And also, we did speak a little bit about the total points. Now, I know that the Gabba it's a high-scoring venue in daytime good conditions, and that's what we're going to get here. And I would expect that this will go, we're going to go the other way here instead of what's been under season recently. This one should line up really well to be an overs game, and the line is low compared to where it could have been previously if these sides weren't coming off. Both sides played in absolute, horrible conditions on the weekend. And I expect that this will probably go over on that, nice, dry, sunny day in Brisbane, mate.
Yeah, very good, mate. 168.5, I think we're dealing with. Again, it's still under 170. Yeah. And if you hadn't have seen the events of the last couple of weeks, I think that would have another 10 or so points on top of it.
One more, Wally, before we move on.
Yep.
Since GWS have lost a bit of this midfield depth, with a few guys missing, they've started to concede quite high to midfielders. Obviously, they will use Bedford to tag somebody, maybe Lockie Neal, so maybe avoid him. Will Ashcroft, mate, his line is 25.5. He's been over that in his last 8 games straight. And he gets what I think now is a pretty good matchup, coming off 31 disposals. He's a guy I'm keen to continue to follow. I think he's got a really generous line here, mate. And so that's one for those people who like their disposal bets to focus on in this game.
All right, there you go. Very good, Harro. All right, we move from Brisbane back to the MCG where Essendon host Geelong. The Bombers are $4.95 after a gallant effort, if you like. It was against Carlton. Geelong are absolutely flying. They're $1.18. The Cats have won 7 straight against the Bombers. Every one of them by at least 28 points. By an average of 51 points. The line for this is 28.5. So it all feels like it's just a Geelong positive direction. You spoke about Essendon getting disposal and giving disposal up. So the obvious question is Holmes, how many? Mate, let's get into this game and see where we can play.
Yeah, well, I feel like the Dons are kind of hanging on by their fingernails right now, and I feel like they're going to cop a smashing sooner or later. I feel like the Cats are the best organised team in it at the moment, and I feel like that they'll just put the Dons to the sword here. Now, the Dons, they've got a 6-day break into this game, followed by a 5-day break into Freo, and then their bye. So this is a bit of a brutal run. They've got a brutal injury list at the moment as well. And look, they're doing really well. The last 2 weeks, they've not given up at all against, giving up big starts against Brisbane and Carlton. And so they've shown a bit of character, but it just looks like they're teetering on the edge of a big smashing, like what we saw the Doggies do to them a few weeks ago. So Geelong, they're just taking all before and playing a really great style of footy, and there's nothing really that I can sort of knock in the way the Cats are going about it. One area I'd probably like to play here. Look, Charlie Curnow, I don't think he's 100% the Charlie Curnow that we've known in the past. He still kicked, I think he still had 5 shots on goal against the Dons on the weekend. And so with the Dons having this big deficiency in the key back stocks, I'm looking at Neal. He's $2.50 to kick 2 or $6 to kick 3. Jeremy Cameron, he's $1.83 to kick 3 if you want something a little bit shorter, but probably a fairly sure thing. The other guy I liked here, and he had a slow start to the year, but he's starting to look like he's coming towards some of his best form, is Stengel. He kicked 4 goals in a really low-scoring game on the weekend. He's $2 to kick 2 against Essendon, who maybe don't have a great matchup for him. So this is where I'm at with this game, mate. Also, if it's played in good conditions, it's another one that I might consider going back the other way and back in the overs. I think Geelong are going to kick a pretty big score. Their line's 165.5. If you take out the games in poor conditions, in Geelong games, Geelong are 9-2 over that line this season. So although the Dons games are trending fairly low, Cats games are trending really high unless they're played in bad conditions. So I'd be happy to have a look at that as well. Otherwise, really like the Cats at the -28. Neil goals, Stengel goals, and maybe Jeremy Cameron goals, mates. Here is where we're at.
Yeah, all makes sense, Harro. Forecast at the moment is little to no rain, cold, but little to no rain across Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So hopefully the conditions are good, and it's all saying light winds and that. So there's nothing dramatic there. But again, who knows? They don't know. No. Bomb doesn't know. So the other thing I was going to say there, Harro, I'm looking at a game laddering up here, 10-goal win, 60 points, currently getting $5. If you think they can do what the Doggies did and win by 70 or more, you're getting up to $7.50. So there could be something in that for the Cats to give them a little tuck and win by a fair bit there.
The other area in this one, Wally, was we saw the return of Darcy Parish on the weekend, and he had his 30 against the Blues. Now, the Blues are generally conceding a lot less to midfielders than what the Cats are. And I think Parish is not a guy that the opposition are going to look to put work into. He didn't use the footy very well, I didn't think, against Carlton. His line is 25.5. So there's another area, I think, if we're looking at a disposal guy, that we might find a bit of value.
Mate, I'm already looking at this multi, and if you want to use the +1s, you could go Cats line, Parish 25 disposals, Cameron 2, Neil and Stengel a goal. Like, it writes itself, Harrow, and then you can do the bigger version where you go over the line, you go 10 plus goals. Like, this is a fun betting game. People talking about games you want to be betting into. This feels like a fun one. I say that now, but who knows? By 7 o'clock on Saturday, it might look like an absolute shit show. All right, mate. Saturday night, North Melbourne. First, you sell a game to Bunbury against West Coast, and you hold on, you finally got the win. So what do? You stay over there, and then you sell a game to Freo on their home deck. Harrow, this is extraordinary to me. Freo's $1.16, North Melbourne's $5.30. Oh, the line's 31.5. I do look at this and go Freo by how much. The only thing I will say is that coming off last week, we spoke about it earlier, Freo are coming off the bye, and North haven't had to travel. They're staying over there. So there's a couple of positives for North. I just don't think it'll matter. I think Freo absolutely whack them here and recognise it as that sort of opportunity. What do you think?
No, I kind of don't see it. I think North are getting more and more competitive, by the week. And we saw only a fortnight ago, I think they were with Collingwood right up until 5 minutes into the fourth quarter before Collingwood kicked, I think, the last 7 goals of the game. I think the 31-point line, I actually think the North will be in this for a lot longer than what people maybe otherwise think. And so I don't mind North getting the 31-point start. I think that I think that it's going to take a lot for Freo to beat that. They're obviously good enough, but also, Freo are off this bye. North, I feel like they've got a really good preparation coming into this one. And you do see sides come together a little bit around a trip like this. So you just, I'm not too bearish on North is what I'm saying. And I've been kind of impressed with them. Obviously, I think it was around 5 or 6 that they made some changes. They were conceding basically cricket scores every week. So it was definitely round 6. After round 6, North have played pretty well. I feel like that they're putting together. And don't forget, I think West Coast are going okay. So beating West Coast isn't probably looked like a nothing to write home about sort of effort maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. But West Coast are going much better now. So that's kind of how I see this one. 31 points. I feel like North getting a big start like that. It's not something I'd put a lot into, but I feel like there's a little edge there. Now, Clarko, we know he's been mucking around with his team a lot, playing with guys in different positions all over the field. Now, Sheasel, he divulged a few things in a press conference last week saying that the back half of the season, they're looking to settle guys down into roles and get some more consistency around that. And so I had a good look at the game against West Coast and looked for role changes. And the big one that I noticed was McKercher going to the back pocket. And when he played that role last year, he got a lot of the footy and he had 34 disposals against West Coast on the weekend. So I'm expecting whatever roles that the North players played on the weekend, that sort of thing is going to continue. We're going to get some consistency there. And so, quite keen on following up on McKercher. Obviously, a lot of the odds and stuff aren't out yet for this game, being a Tuesday, so I can't quote a price on him. But look, if we're able to get something hopefully around $2 for him to have 25, or maybe 26.5 as a line, I'll be pretty keen to follow up there. Now, I do like backing players the week after they've copped a tag if I don't think they're going to get tagged the following week. And that's LDU this week. Even though Freo do concede fairly low to midfielders overall, I feel like he's probably not going to get tagged this week. And it probably lines up a fair bit better. And he'd been really consistent before that. His CBAs are high, so he's got the role. And so he'd be a guy, if we can look for him, again, getting a line around this 25, 26. Another guy I'd be looking to follow from a player point of view, Wally.
All right, very good, mate. Very good. Let's look at Sunday's games. Port Adelaide hosting Melbourne, Adelaide Oval. It's the primetime Sunday game, which goes into the news at 3:20 our time. Port's $1.85. Melbourne's $2. These were very good against the Pies, but it doesn't matter how well you play. If you want to go down to the line, down to the wire with the Pies, you've just got to be really good because that's what they do best. They got the chockies there. What did Port do? Port do what they do best, Harro, which is come off a heap of pressure and stand up for their coach and have an emotional win on the road, and then they go home and maybe they lose. I don't know. But if you look at their wins this year, this is what they do. This is not news. Everyone in the media talks about this emotional team that just seem to win games when everything's against them. Right? I don't know. I don't know. But then $2 for Melbourne on the road. I think the D's can actually win this, Harro.
Well, I think the D's form, apart from that St Kilda game, which we obviously backed them in, so they chose a good week to play poorly, didn't they? Everything else around that is pretty good, and everything else, look, that Port have done, I can see really. I kind of called that Port would beat GWS because they had a big edge in the midfield. They're not going to have a big edge in the midfield in this game, and so look, I prefer the Ds as well at the Pick'em. I think the Ds can get this done. But there's a few other areas, I'd like to probably focus on as well. So I am keen. I'm happy to have a bet on the Ds. No problem there. But going outside of that, the Ds just conceded a huge amount of disposals to the Collingwood backs. And I feel like this is a bit of a trend at the moment. And you look at Josh Day cost 34. Howe got 26. That paid $21 for him to have 25. Quaynor had 25. That paid $29. So anyone that was onto these has absolutely smashed it. And Frampton as well. He had 15. These are all season highs for these Pies guys. That paid $3.75. So I'm having a look here. Look, the obvious one here is Rosie. And since he's made that positional change, he's 8 games straight that he's got 27 plus. So I think we're probably going to get a line around that 27, and I'd be very keen to be backing that with a good matchup here. Other guys, like if you look at who the sort of similar player to the Pies is, Alir, and he's actually a higher disposal sort of player than a Frampton. But I think if we're able to get something around even money for Alir, I think he should go pretty well. The other guy is Ryan Burton, and he's only $2.40 to get 20. He's getting half the kickouts as well. So, you throw them in as a little bonus. And I feel like the Port backs could all have quite a big game here with a really good matchup. Another area which I like here is Port are conceding huge amounts of disposals to rucks. And Maxi Gawn here gets a big opportunity to go large. And I know Port have actually tried to get stuck into Maxi physically in the past, and they've revved him up a fair bit. I think there's a bit of bad blood here. I don't think Maxi, he likes him, and he'll be in for a big game here. And it's also part of the reason why I think the D's are going to win, because if Max Gawn has a big game, then the D's are always a good shot, aren't they? And he gets a great matchup here. I think you'll probably find a line for Gorney around about that 20 and a half. And he's been getting that anyway, consistently on or around that 20. And against Port with a good matchup, I'd back Gorney in to get that done again, mate.
Very good, Harro. All right, the round closes out with the second game at Optus. We don't often see this. I don't reckon we would have seen 2 games at Optus since COVID, to be honest. Like that is rare. West Coast, $4.10. Your baggers are $1.24. Now, Carlton's won 5 straight against West Coast by 71, 65, 71, 108 and 63. So they have gone bang. They're 5-7, but they've got percentage which is as good as half the teams in the 8. Do the baggers look at this and go, okay, we've got to string a couple of wins together, get over there, build the percentage again, and then just, get ourselves closer to that 50-50 ledger and have a crack. So, I don't know, Harro. I know that the baggers have been more competitive, but it's a 25.5-point line for a reason. Carlton have owned them for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I'm not so confident, mate, actually, about the Blues here. I was very disappointed with the Blues on the weekend against Essendon. I thought, I said this about Essendon the other week. They're rating really lowly. Now, Carlton are also rating really lowly as well. And you look at their form, mate, and so they lost to the Giants by 5 goals before their bye. There's nothing good about what the Giants have been doing either side of that win. They also lost to Sydney by 3 goals. And there's nothing that the Swannies have been doing either around, I think the Swans lost both games, either side of that Carlton game by 10 goals. So their form for the Blues is not rating hugely ahead of West Coast, to be honest. And they're coming, through a fairly weak form line. Carlton, if you look back to the last time they played a good side, it was Adelaide 5 weeks ago. They lost by 10 goals. So, I think Carlton are definitely rating in that bottom 6 sort of area right now, along with West Coast. And you look at West Coast, they did play Adelaide away just 2 weeks ago, only 2 weeks after Carlton played them. And it was a pretty similar result. I think they lost by 11 goals. Carlton lost by 10 goals. This is played at West Coast home ground. West Coast followed that up with, they were level with Geelong early in the fourth quarter, only 2 weeks ago on their home deck. They've just obviously lost to North, but with 5 more scoring shots. So they're doing a lot right, West Coast. And I think the big price about West Coast is maybe a way to play this rather than than asking them to beat the line, although I probably would play the line as well. I don't have a lot of faith in what the Blues are doing. A lot of their star players don't seem quite right. Like Curnow, I don't think he's not having a great season. He just doesn't look like the Charlie Curnow of the last couple of years. Obviously, Harry Mackay's not there. And actually, the Blues have played their best footy with Harry in the side. He's been a bit of a barometer for them this year, so he's really missed. Cripper again, I think just 15 disposals on the weekend. Just not really getting into it like he has in the past. So there's some issues there, Carlton, and it wouldn't surprise me if they cough this one up. It's obviously not a game I'm probably looking to put loads of money, a little bit like the Port Adelaide game against GWS the other week. It's more like maybe find a big price and last week, and find a big price about this one, because you can't really trust what either side is doing. But forced to bet, definitely taking West Coast at the 25 start.
You can get $7 for the try bet on West Coast for them to win by 16 points or more, or $4.10, as I said, for them to win straight. Harro, last one from you, mate. As we always do, going to need your best bet for the round. We've gone through them all. There's a fair bit of confidence across the board here from you. Coming off a few good weeks, who do we like for the best of the weekend?
The best this week is Brisbane with giving a 3-goal start. So, basically Brisbane to win by 3 goals plus against the Giants, mate. I'm very keen there.
There you go. All right, mate, you've been great as always. That's it from us. As we always say, check us out on socials at footyfgpod, and that is where you'll be able to see anything we like closer to the game. And, of course, if you're watching on YouTube, chuck us a follow, subscribe, share it with your mates, and make sure you're tuning in there. And to all of our audio listeners, thanks for the ongoing support. We haven't forgotten about you either. Don't worry, you're not missing too much visually, just our ugly heads. But thanks to everyone that listened in. Harro, you've been great, mate. I'll see you next week.
What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.